Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Number 2, Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Half the work week, officially in the rearview mirror. We're working towards the weekend here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Fired up you are with us. Brandon Drumm in 15 minutes talking Oklahoma transfers to LSU. Bauer Sharp and Nick Anderson going from Norman to Baton Rouge. We'll talk to Brandon about that coming up in 15 minutes. Matthew Brune covers all things LSU 4 on 3, part of the team over there at the Bengal Tiger, and he's with us on Wednesdays. Matthew, how are you?
Hey, Hunt, doing well. Just, working, and we had to stay up late last night and watch some interesting basketball.
It was just awful. I tried to put it into words in my first segment. I don't know if I did a very good job. You watch a lot of basketball. What'd you make of Stetson there in the first half?
Yeah, they were clearly the worst team that I've seen this year, and I cover some Southland teams. I mean, we've seen different SWAC teams, like Alabama State came to the PMAC and put up a fight, so Stetson was clearly the worst team I think LSU's played in some time. So it was good for LSU to come out, start strong, and especially defensively, which this team is going to have to be, hang its hat on to come out with that level of intensity was good. But at the same time, it's just, I don't know how much we can really take from it.
Do you care at all that LSU gave up a bunch of points in the second half? I mean, they never were threatened. They scored 53 points in the second half. So was it any sort of red flag at all, or hey, they were up 50?
I don't think it's a concern. At the same time, SMU, and obviously a game with bigger stakes, also had more success in the second half. So you do wonder if there's a trend of teams kind of figuring out LSU's defense after halftime and being able to generate more looks. But I think in general, Stetson game in particular is not one that I'm too worried about from the second half.
We haven't talked a lot about Curtis Givens. Hadn't shot it great. Hadn't played a ton of minutes. Last night he does make 3 threes out of 9. Did have 6 assists and 1 turnover. What have you made of Curtis Givens through a month and a half?
I think he's been about what I expected. He physically looks the part at 6'3", 6'4", strong, can shoot the ball. I still believe in the shot, and I think just the speed of the game is something that he's going to continue to work with and kind of figure out where he fits in as a true point guard on this LSU team and moving forward within the program. So I am still bullish on him. I think he's going to have the size to be a good defender. I think he can impact rebounding, he can defend. I think just the game needs to slow down for him a little bit.
Derek Fountain played 20 minutes last night, 10 more in the first half. Do you think he's going to play a little bit more? Do you think that kind of the rotation we've seen against some of the better teams is where they're going to stick?
For the longest time this year, I've thought that they could use his rebounding, especially defensively, because they've just struggled so much on that end. But I think the offensive limitation still is just kind of too much to put him in for. Corey Chest is just significantly better across the board than Fountain, so they'll play him a lot, and then in big games, we've seen them go to the 4-guard lineup. So that kind of negates the need for Derek Fountain. So I'm not sure he really gets on the court a ton, but I still think he is a good depth piece that if they need to go 9 deep or 10 deep and they get in foul trouble, they can put in there for a little bit.
You mentioned Corey Chest, and I know you were really high on Chest coming into the season, but when Damian Collins got hurt last year, we saw a lot of Hunter Dean and Chest redshirted. Do you have a good reason why? It seems like he could have helped last year.
Yeah, I don't have a great reason. I think we've seen it, this year. His offensive game still has work to do. I think that they felt good with Hunter Dean kind of playing that 5 spot, and at the 4, they knew what they had with Jalen Reed. And I mean, even I guess Derek Fountain last year liked it. I do know that this year they added David Patrick as the associate head coach. He's been huge in terms of helping this offense and trying to set rotations and stuff like that. So I think it might be more of a David Patrick type thing. Maybe he stepped in and gave them a different perspective. But, I agree. could have helped them last year, but I'm not going to complain that I think this is a guy that, wherever, if he ends up at LSU and stays, then he could be a 5-year player.
You look at last night, Stetson tried some zone. We know SMU played zone in the first half back on Saturday, and then they had their best half when they actually went back to man. But do you feel like teams are going to zone LSU with some of the three-point shooting issues that we've seen?
Yeah, I would. I would throw out a triangle and two. I would throw some junk stuff at LSU because that starting lineup is just so void of perimeter shooting with Jai Bailey, Corey Chest, Damian Collins. I said it before. I mean, Jordan Sears and Cam Carter have to come out aggressive, have to look to shoot the three ball, have to try to get their shots off. Because if not, then defenses are just going to have too easy of a time guarding them. And we've seen that before where LSU starts slow because the starting lineup just can't really find its footing. So I definitely think that teams will experiment with that, look to kind of pack the paint a little bit more. And if Jai Bailey hits 3 threes or if Damian Collins hits 3, then you live with it.
All right, LSU's probably going to win their last 2 non-conference games. You're talking about teams in Stetson's realm of the net ratings in New Orleans and Mississippi Valley State. So you look at this team and what they've accomplished in the non-conference, assuming they win these next 2 games. You lose one of those 2 quad fours, and that's going to be a pretty big albatross on your neck there. But if they win the next 2, how do you feel about where they stand entering conference play?
I feel good. I anticipated them losing 2 or 3 games in the non-conference, so for them to end up 11-2 would be impressive. It certainly should be applauded for McMahon to have the wins that they have to this point. At the same time, they've only played 2 teams that are where the rest of the SEC is going to be, and they've lost both of them to Pitt and SMU. That's just such a challenging aspect of all of this is that, I mean, South Carolina last night just beat Clemson. It's just going to be really, really hard to find consistency and stack up a ton of wins in conference play with the caliber of competition that they have. So they've set themselves up to potentially be on the bubble if they can have a strong season, like a 7-11, 8-10. But I do caution people, and getting to 8-10 sounds a lot easier than it actually is going to be this year.
There's no doubt. I feel like, at least if people have listened to me, and I think if they've read you understand, what LSU's up against in January, February, and March. And I think a lot of people realize just how tough this is going to be. It's another question of how the fan base reacts when you lose 3 games in a row. When one Tuesday night you go out there on the road and lose by 31, because that stuff's coming. There's just no way for this LSU team to avoid that, I don't think. But that doesn't mean the season's over. You just have to find a spot here or there to win. And it feels like to me, and I'll let you kind of comment on this, but it feels like to me LSU's going to have to take care of the business they can take care of at home. You can't give away some home games because life on the road is going to be brutal.
Yeah, and I think Matt McMahon has proven to us time and time again that he's been able to do more with less. I mean, last year getting that team to 9-9, I still think is an incredible feat. And to get this team to potentially 11-2 in non-conference, a very, very impressive feat considering Tyrell Ward didn't play this year, and Jalen Reed has been out the past few games. So without those 2, the top end talent just isn't quite where it needs to be. But at the same time, I've been wrong about games before with McMahon, and they find ways to win and they find ways to battle. So I am holding out hope that he continues to just put on a masterclass and is able to get this team to 7-8 wins. But yeah, like you said, this is the best conference potentially of this century, and that is not an exaggeration. This conference just continues to get better. So if they had Ward and Reed and they were clicking, I would say this is a lock for a tournament team, but they don't. So now it's just going to be a battle every night.
Kim Mulkey's team's going to make the tournament. Their semester's in the rearview mirror. They're inching towards conference play here. Just a thumbnail on where you think her team is right now as they churn through the non-conference.
I think they're in a good spot. Last night was a good win over Seton Hall. Take care of business, blow them out. I think the turnover issues have been magnified. I think that's what Mulkey and company have hammered home consistently. And if they can take care of the ball and just get shots up, they're such a good rebounding team that they're able to compete with anybody. Defensively, they're going to have to continue to take steps forward. The SEC is tough for this year. It's not just LSU, South Carolina anymore. Texas is good. Oklahoma's good. Ole Miss and Tennessee are good. So it's going to be interesting, how they play the rest of non-conference and into conference play. But it's definitely not a perfect team, but they're extremely talented. Flage, Anissa, and Michaela's finding her footing as well. She was awesome last night.
He's Matthew Brune. You can read all his work at the Bengal Tiger, part of the On3 team. He's all over the basketball beats and the transfer portal beat as well this time of year. We appreciate your time, Matthew. We'll do it again next week at some point.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Hunt.
Matthew Brune, part of the Bengal Tiger over there on 3. We're going to talk LSU Oklahoma transfers coming up in 15 minutes. When we come back, I think that this sets up pretty nicely for Spencer Rattler, should he be the guy that the Saints turn to. I'll tell you why coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is where you can find every car that is on the lot. If you think to yourself, I probably need a new car, I hate going to dealerships. You walk in, and all of a sudden you've got just a horde of salespeople all over you talking about deals, pointing you into vehicles, going all over the lot. You don't have to deal with all that. One, that's never going to happen to you at Genesis of Baton Rouge because their brand ambassadors are going to treat you like a guest, not a customer. They're not going to treat you like a piece of meat that's got a commission attached to it. It's never going to be the case. But you don't have to go to the lot to pick out a vehicle. Start your process at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Check out some of the things you like, some of the things you don't. Get on the phone, give them a call, and have one of their brand ambassadors bring a car to you, whether that's at home on a Saturday, whether that's on the job on a Wednesday. If you just got a 20-minute break, they can come to you and allow you to get behind the wheel and test drive that right around your office, wherever it is you work. And then you can kind of see for yourself there and let them drive it back to the dealership. If, in fact, you do want to purchase that vehicle, they can work that out. They've got e-contracts, digital delivery. All that's possible. You never have to set foot on the lot to purchase a Genesis of Baton Rouge.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, hosted by the Goo Goo Dolls' #1 fan, Hunt Palmer.
New Orleans Saints set it up for a Monday night football contest on the frozen tundra, which will be about frozen on Monday night. The high on Monday in Green Bay is like 23 or 24, and the sun's going to go down. So it's going to be real chilly up there in Green Bay, and the Saints have a decision to make as to who their starting quarterback is going to be. Derek Carr is not going to be available this week. It's going to be Rattler or Haener, and I made the case yesterday that it's got to be Rattler, because of the upside, because of the potential, and because Haener didn't really show much in his opportunity there. And I was careful to tell you that I'm not trying to erase a person's career based on one half of football. Jake Haener was bad on Sunday in the first half. No two ways about it. And that doesn't mean his career's over, but I just feel like it's pretty obvious that Spencer Rattler needs to be given that opportunity moving forward this year. Now, we know that Spencer Rattler's first go at this was not very good. He was thrown in there against Tampa. He went 22 of 40 for 55%, threw for 241 and a touchdown. He was picked off twice. That wasn't great. Came back against Denver in the Dome. The Saints scored 10 points that day. He was 25 of 35. He threw for 172 yards and no touchdowns. He got sacked 6 times in that game. He was sacked 5 times in the game before against Tampa. So that's 11 sacks in his first 2 games. That's not very good. And then they played at L.A. The Saints scored 8 points in that game. He was 50%, 12 of 24. Didn't throw a touchdown and got sacked 3 more times. So you're talking about a completion percentage in the neighborhood of 58% or so. You're talking about a guy that was sacked 14 times in 3 games. He threw 1 touchdown and 2 picks. It was not good, and I'm not here to sell you a bill of goods that it was good. However, if we go a little bit deeper into that, how bad a spot was it for him? And we did talk about that before it happened, and it was terrible. You had both guards out and your starting center out. You had banged up wide receivers. Taysom Hill wasn't available. Like, it was awful what he was put into at that point. And you add in the fact that Tampa, who he started his first game against, top 15 pressure team, and then the 5th highest blitz rate in the NFL. That's a team that wants to dial it up. That's not a great matchup for a player in his first start. And then you play the Broncos, who generated the 2nd highest pressure rate in the league, and Rattler was pressured on almost half his dropbacks. You've got a really high-end defensive front in Denver against a mash unit offensively for the Saints. That's not great, and it wasn't great as he was, again, pressured on half his dropbacks. And then you played the Chargers, who were the number one ranked scoring defense in the NFL. Nobody in the NFL is atrocious on defense. They're pros out there. But there are some situations that are worse than others. And I would suggest and submit that Rattler's spot there with a terrible offensive personnel setting and the defenses he was playing against, not the best landing spot for a rookie quarterback. But now you've got a couple of weeks here against teams that may give you a better opportunity to thrive. Green Bay, while a good football team, and it's going to be a tough environment and awful conditions for a kid who's from the Southwest and played in the SEC, you're talking about a team in Green Bay that's bottom 5 in terms of pressure in the league. That's a benefit, and your offensive line's pretty healthy. Next week against the Raiders, well, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. So these next 2 weeks, at least as far as the matchup goes for Spencer Rattler, make a little bit more sense as a softer landing pad. Rattler did a great one-on-one. It was an exclusive interview with LouisianaSports.net that Ross Jackson put up, and he said, look, I have had an opportunity to kind of go back and look at that month and dive into what I did right and what I did wrong. And, of course, there are a lot of things you had to get to, but he felt like one of the things that he struggled with was his mentality. And when you go play, for lack of a better term, defensively against teams that are so aggressive, you're just playing on your heels the entire time. And you've got the Bucs breathing down your neck and the Broncos breathing down your neck and the Chargers breathing down your neck, and you're terrified to make a mistake. And he didn't throw an interception in the last 2 games. It wasn't like he, was a turnover machine, but he just played defensively. And I thought if you look at the game against Washington on Sunday, that he was more aggressive, that he was more assertive. He wasn't reckless, but you were in a spot where you had to try to come back. It didn't do you any good to sit there and be passive, to check it down and run draw plays and throw it away and take sacks. It paid to go play. And it may pay to go play against teams that don't send a lot of pressure. You ought to have more time to make decisions. Your offensive line ought to have a better opportunity to keep you clean. And then you see if that arm talent can take over. You still don't have the requisite wide receivers out there. We get that. There just aren't enough guys on this team that are healthy, that are difference makers on the edge. So I don't think that Rattler's going to light it up for the next 2 weeks. But it stands to reason that it could look similarly to the Washington game, assuming the Saints can run it a little bit and they don't get into a lot of third and longs that create pressure packages. The Packers are not the best defense in the league. The Raiders sure not the best in the league. This may be the turning point for some confidence for Spencer Rattler. I would sincerely prefer if we were sitting here just breaking down how this Saints offense matched up against the Packers defense and how the Packers offense matched up against the Saints defense, and we were looking at what Tampa and the Falcons were doing this week, and we were right in the middle of a monster division race and looking towards home field advantage. We're not. We're looking at the potential future of the franchise, and we continue to do so every single day. And in this instance, I think it's reasonable to suggest that Spencer Rattler can progress and do really well the next 2 and potentially 3 weeks. Who knows? You get 2 weeks of confidence against lesser defenses. You get a second crack at Tampa. You know a little bit more about what they want to do, and you're healthier up front. Maybe this is the confidence boon that we're looking for. On the flip side, if Spencer Rattler is awful the next 2 weeks, it's another data point. It, again, doesn't disqualify him from a career in the NFL, but if you're the Saints front office and you're looking at the biggest overhaul this franchise has seen in 17 years, you need the information on Spencer Rattler. He could be part of this. And if it looks really, really bad, you start to pivot and understand that, well, Derek Carr's the quarterback next year, and it doesn't feel like his heir apparent is on the roster. Doesn't mean it can't be, but it doesn't feel like it is. If you have that information, you're more armed to go into the offseason and make the proper moves. It's tough to judge a rookie quarterback against 3 high-end defenses with nothing around him in the offense. If it happens over 5 or 6 games, that are in more advantageous situations this coming 15 days, well, then you may have your answer. I'm not saying you definitely do, but you may. So to me, this is a no-brainer on who to start. This is a different look for him. This is a new window in which to evaluate, and there will be new information available to the Saints about Spencer Rattler here coming up starting on Monday. We'll start to more closely look at Green Bay coming up here, but I think this week is more about talking about where the Saints are and what they're doing. And at quarterback, it's a relevant talking point. So that's my thoughts on Spencer Rattler getting the opportunity for the Saints. That hasn't been announced. We'll learn more with practice availability coming tomorrow, and then practice availability coming up on Friday and Saturday. But I just can't imagine they would go another way. We'll learn more. We'll let you know about it here on the Hunt Palmer Show, and certainly Ross Jackson will have you covered over on LouisianaSports.net. If you're looking for Saints coverage, you can always find it, Hunt on Saints. That's been on YouTube for over a year now, and we appreciate all y'all for jumping on, subscribing, and growing that channel the way that you have. If you don't care to go to YouTube and you'd like to use your favorite podcast app, Hunt on Saints, still available for you. You can check it out, like, subscribe, rate, and view. Get our content in front of as many people as you can. We always very much appreciate that. We're going to transition back to LSU football. One of the first portal commitment that LSU picked up was Bauer Sharp, tight end from Oklahoma. The most recent, Nick Anderson, wide receiver from Oklahoma. So let's bring on a writer from Oklahoma who can tell us about these two portal pass catchers that LSU has reeled in. That, of course, is Brandon Drumm. He'll join us when we come back on a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carbo and his team, fantastic to work with. If you're thinking, my renewal's not until April or May, like I'll just deal with that when that rolls around. Usually 90 to 120 days out is the best day to start looking at your renewal for your commercial insurance program. Highland Insurance Group is an independent agent. That means they've got access to dozens of markets, and they very likely have a client in your line of work and understand where the best market is for your general liability policy, where the best market is for your auto policy. Can you bundle them? Where does your EPL need to be? Where is your property? Who's willing to handle that? Who's got an appetite for it? They can shop around and make sure that you've got the proper rate. I tell you all the time, they're not a magic bullet. They're not going to be able to immediately lop off 20% from your property premiums. In this market, that's an impossibility, not with the proper coverage. But they can make sure that you are properly insured if something awful were to happen to your business. If you're a business owner and you're looking to get a better handle on what your insurance is supposed to look like, I highly recommend the Highland Insurance Group. It's Jonathan Carbo and his team, based right here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out statewide or really wherever you are along the Gulf Coast corridor. It's the Highland Insurance Group. You can find them online at HighlandIG.com, HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show with former Texas A&M Yell leader Hunt Palmer. Giga Maggies.
Transfer portal is a crazy world. Just keeps spinning. LSU has done some work in the portal over the last 7 days or so. Two of those additions coming from Oklahoma, Bauer Sharp, tight end, and Nick Anderson, wide receiver. Figured we're going to learn about those. Might as well go to somebody who's actually watched them play a lot. Brandon Drumm covers Oklahoma for Rivals. OU Insider joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Brandon, we appreciate the time. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing quite well. I know things are just as hectic up there in Norman as they are down here in Baton Rouge, but wanted a little bit of time to talk about those two guys. So first, Bauer Sharp. I think the main thing LSU fans know about him is that he might make ill-advised pass attempts on double throws, but there's probably more to his game than just that. What can you tell us about the tight end who was at Oklahoma for a year?
Well, he was at Southeast Louisiana to begin with, so he's from those parts. He's an athlete, former quarterback. He's a great athlete. I mean, he was probably utilized in the wrong way at Oklahoma. They used him quite a bit as kind of a split zone blocker and all those type of deals. But he's more of a split out. He's more of a guy that's gonna. No, I want to get this straight. He did get better at blocking as the year went on, and I think everybody saw that. I think you all saw that at LSU as well. but he's a fantastic athlete, can make difficult catches. He's just new to the tight end position. So I think if he had another year at Oklahoma, particularly with Ben Arbuckle, I think he would have been super successful. He reminded me quite a bit of I'm trying to think of a good analogy here for you. I mean, look, I don't know that he is as athletic as Braden Willis was at Oklahoma, but he's up there. So he has a lot of those similarities to me. Just a really strong athlete, really good player, new to the position. So you guys will have some up and downs with him, but he's going to make some plays where you just sit there and scratch your head and say, how the hell did he do that too?
Yeah, Brian Kelly, when he talked about him, said, yeah, he's a good pass catcher, good athlete, but we really like what he does in the run game as far as blocking, because LSU quite literally had nobody on the roster once Mason Taylor declared for the draft and their other tight end went to the transfer portal. So they had one guy who's a former basketball player that's basically just a wide receiver.
He got better, but I'll tell you, I've watched him completely whiff as he's a lead blocker, split zone, just like literally watch a linebacker run right by him, and then he tries to go to the second level, and the play goes for no gain. So he was a work in progress. So I think you guys are going to get the best part of him. So kudos to LSU for that. Oklahoma got the ill-advised throws, the tight end screens against Ole Miss type deal, the fumbles. They got the headaches. You guys are probably going to get the all-conference version that everybody thought he was going to be when he showed up. And I mean, he flashed all spring and all fall. Such high expectations for him, and he just didn't live up to it. I think he probably will at LSU, to be honest.
Well, this past year, obviously not the offensive effort that Oklahoma was looking for. But if you go back 2 years ago, things were a lot better when Dylan Gabriel was throwing around and Nick Anderson was making 10 touchdown catches. He's now coming to LSU after missing all but 2 games this past year. What can you tell us about Nick Anderson?
He's a freak. He was a underutilized player out of high school. He came from Katy, which they just ran the ball the whole time. He's a big pass catcher. He's a guy that can be a playmaker for LSU. Honestly, like he fits the mold of what you all are used to at the wide receiver position, particularly with like your outside guys. He just kind of has the injury thing with him, though. I think he's only had 1 year, much like his brother, right? Rodney Anderson had that special year at Oklahoma in 2017 and then was injured again and kind of jetted off to the NFL after that. But just had the injury bug, couldn't stay healthy with his hip. And before that, he had kind of a knee problem and then a hamstring problem and all that type of stuff. So that's kind of something you guys are going to have to worry about a little bit with Nick Anderson. But at the same time, when he's healthy, he is probably one of the better wide receivers in the country. So there's that. It's kind of hit or miss. It's boom or bust with him. But look, everybody seems to go away from Oklahoma, and they always end up doing better than what they did in Norman. That's usually the case, right, with the transfer portal. So my hunch is that you're going to get the 2023 version of Nick Anderson healthy and making big plays for the Tigers. And if that's the case, you're going to have an all-SEC wide receiver.
A lot of that's very, very good to hear. I know a lot of folks in Norman were ready to get to the end of that regular season that came to a close against LSU. What are the last 3 weeks been like for Brent Venables and that football program?
Chaotic. As you all know, the number one player in the portal is in Norman right now, John Mateer. I expect him to be a Sooner. So that's big news. Oklahoma should end up with a couple of other offensive tackle pickups here pretty soon, some big wide receiver pickups here pretty soon. I think Isaiah Satania will be a big one they get here pretty soon as well. And then on top of that, they got a couple of big name defensive tackles that are in. One of the top defensive tackles in James Thompson in the portal is in Norman, or will be in Norman tomorrow, along with Corey Robinson, one of the top offensive tackles in the portal. I expect Derek Simmons out of Western Carolina to end up a Sooner. He's, I think, the 23rd overall portal player on Rivals. So they're doing well in the portal. They needed it. it's just been hectic with the offensive coordinator stuff and obviously the portal and, the National Signing Day and obviously the bowl game. Much like you guys, it's been chaotic and just a whirlwind for everybody that covers college football.
It has certainly been that. We appreciate you being flexible with us and taking a little bit of time. I'll let you get back to it. Thanks, Brandon.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Brandon Drumm, OU insider, part of the Rivals Network covering the Sooners. I didn't want to spend 15, 20 minutes talking about all that stuff with him because I feel like you can pretty much hit the high notes there. But I felt like those answers, if you're an LSU fan, were pretty encouraging. I think he countered Brian Kelly's thoughts on Bauer Sharp a little bit. When you, I spend more time probably than I should, quite frankly, but I do spend a lot of time listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos from other beat writers around the league. I think it helps me to form opinions and to kind of stay up on news. I know Matt does it for Around the SEC on AFR, and I try to do it so that I'm as informed as I can be. And Brandon and his crew at OU Insider is who I lean on for Oklahoma. And I think they do a really, really good job. And they talked about Bauer Sharp a lot. And I think it's probably twofold because, one, they thought he was really, really good in the spring and they thought he would have a huge impact. And then, including Nick Anderson, their 4 top wide receiver options got hurt. And when that happened, you started to look around like, who can we throw the ball to? And Bauer Sharp was the guy that they could throw the ball to. And consequently, he led the team in catches. He's really athletic. And I think that's the highlight of his game. But Brian Kelly gets on his press conference and he goes, this guy can really block. And Brandon's going, well, I've watched him and he can sometimes. And then sometimes he whiffs. And that's just comes with learning the position. You're not pulling in, I can't even think of who the best example of an elite blocking tight end is. I mean, I think if you're like LSU, like Dylan Gordon and Chase Claymaugh were pretty good blocking tight ends in the Les Miles era, but you're not getting that. And I don't know that anybody really wants that this day and age. I think you want a guy with a little bit more athleticism, but LSU's got to have somebody that can help out on the edges to throw some blocks. And there were far too many times this past year where LSU asked a tight end, generally outside of Mason Taylor, to help with something down there, and it just didn't materialize. So I think Bauer Sharp can help with that, but if you listen to Brandon, maybe it's going to be a work in progress, and they'll have to continue to teach that. But he is big, he is physical, he's old, so hopefully he can pick that up pretty quickly. The Nick Anderson answers were, if you're an LSU fan, that's exactly what you want to hear. And I haven't talked about Nick Anderson today because I feel like I talked about him significantly yesterday as a potential add to what's already a really good wide receiver situation. If you'd like to read more about the entire wide receiver situation, I've got a column up on LouisianaSports.net right now that talks about LSU's wide receiver checklist being complete. I think they've rounded out that room incredibly nicely, and Nick Anderson was the missing piece. You needed a 6'4", potential number 1 possession type receiver. I know what the upside is on Berrien Brown. I know what the upside is on Chris Hilton. I know how good Aaron Anderson is when he's not the primary option. I know all these things. I think Kyle Parker can be a pretty good player. I think that they have a couple of freshmen they believe in this class, in Phillip Wright and Teron Francis. I think there is reason to be optimistic about a lot of these guys, but I don't feel like I can slap a number 1 tag on any of those guys as of yesterday. Anderson's not there because he did missed the whole year with a hip/quad injury that may have been misdiagnosed, and it cost him 10 games. And I don't know what the status of that is right now. I don't. But I know he caught 10 touchdowns, an Oklahoma freshman record 2 years ago, and I watched the tape on that. He's beating one-on-one coverage. He's high-pointing the ball. He's getting open on deep routes and outrunning people. He's making catches around the line of scrimmage and making guys miss. He caught the game winner against Texas. He's legit. All that was as a freshman, but is he healthy? If he is, you're listening to Brandon and first words out of his mouth were, well, he's a freak. So I'm very, very bullish on what this wide receiver room is now. If you read my piece 3 weeks ago on LouisianaSports.net about portal needs, I pointed to wide receiver really quickly because a wide receiver room that has Kyle Parker and Xavier Thomas and Aaron Anderson and Jelani Watkins is not going to get it done. Those guys can play in the SEC. I don't want to put them in the same breath as the elite wide receivers that have come through LSU. And Nick Anderson's not there. And I'm not here to tell you that Nick Anderson and Barry and Brown and Chris Hilton and Aaron Anderson as a 1, 2, 3, 4 is the same as having Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Terrace Marshall. I'm not here to tell you it's the same as having Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Kyron Lacey. I don't think it's quite that level, but that's the top of the top. I think this is quality enough if you're LSU, but it needed that number one guy. And to talk to Brandon and hear him say that he could be one of the best wide receivers in the country, that he could be a first-team All-SEC guy, that's what you're looking for. And this was a really good sell for LSU. Think about the guys you brought in the transfer portal. You bring in Destin Hill from Florida State at wide receiver. They were the worst passing team in the ACC this year, the worst. You bring in Barry and Brown from Kentucky. They have been in the bottom 3 in the SEC in passing and the top 2 in interceptions all 3 years Barry and Brown's been in college. And then you look at Nick Anderson, and Oklahoma was the worst passing team in the SEC this year. So they all come from absolute dysfunctional messes, and they're coming into a ready-made offense that knows how to throw the football. They've got a fifth-year senior quarterback who's going to be the second best single season in LSU passing history. They've got now a full complement of wide receivers, Trey'Dez Green and Bauer Sharp at tight end, bringing in J.D. LaFleur, and you've got talent at running back as well. You got to shore up the offensive line. That'll be something I talk about probably on tomorrow's show with what LSU needs to do moving forward. But I think this is a good-looking wide receiver group, and I think that you've got a passing offense now that you should be able to lean on. And I've said that. Like, I don't think that LSU is going to be a dominant run team in 2025. I don't. If they are, and I'm dead wrong, I'll be thrilled. But I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to need to lean on the pass a good bit. And that's okay. You can throw the ball and win championships. But you can't throw the ball and win championships if you don't have really good wide receivers. And I think now they have the potential to have really good wide receivers. And that was the goal as of 9 days ago. And that's what they've accomplished here in the transfer portal in Baton Rouge. All right. I appreciate Brandon Drumm from OU Insider for jumping aboard. We'll step aside, close things out. It is a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electrical Services, 7 to 10-year warranty. You don't hear that on a lot of things, but you do on the Generac home standby generators from Boudreaux's Electrical. That process can get started today. You give them a call, 985-397-1562 or 225-300-9389. Give them a call or check them out online, boudreauxelectrical.com, and start the process. What do you need? What do you need powered? Not everybody's the same. Not everybody has the same amount of square footage. Not everybody wants the same electronic things powered. And once they figure out what you need, they'll get you in the generator that fits your needs. Then they'll get you that warranty, and it's going to be installed by a full-time Boudreaux's Electrical employee using the highest quality in tubing and wiring, and most of it's going to be done underground. And then they're going to monitor it remotely 24/7 in case something were to go wrong. That's the difference in working with Boudreaux's Electrical with your home standby generators from Generac. I gave you the numbers. It's 985-397-1562 or 225-300-9389. Check them out online, boudreauxelectrical.com, boudreauxelectrical.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Get your picks in now for the Hooters College Football Bowl Pick'em Challenge presented by Yingling. Register at 1045ESPN.com and get your picks in by December 27th. This year's season-long champion will win $1,000 in cash and a $200 Hooters gift card.
All right, fast-moving show today. Appreciate all those that were a part of it. J.D. Piquel hosted the Hard Count, talking some college football. We had Matthew Brune talking hoops at the top of hour number 2, and just chatted with Brandon Drumm of OU Insider. If, in fact, you missed any of today's show, you can always go back and catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Search Hunt Palmer Show, like, subscribe, rate, and review. Looking for LSU football, Hunt on LSU. Looking for Saints football, Hunt on Saints. And if you're looking for hoops with Hunt back activated. I was shocked at the amount of people on Twitter when we put that up yesterday that did not know that was still up and running. So we've been doing it for a few weeks now. And we'll continue to. All our basketball segments will be there on the feed. Hoops with Hunt. If you were a listener in a previous life, back in the Will Wade era, that same feed is still up and rolling. All our basketball content is right there. So appreciate you all for hanging out with us here on this Wednesday. One thing left to do. It's take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
Just take it.
All right, first one here. The Charlotte Hornets gave a kid a PlayStation 5 at midcourt last night during a media timeout and then took it back and gave him a signed jersey. They have since apologized after the video went viral and said the stunt missed the mark. They said it was a quote-unquote stunt and have promised the kid a PlayStation 5 and a fan experience getting to meet players. Take it or leave it.
I can't leave this fast enough. Whose idea was this? Who is in promotions?
There's no way.
The things you can bring a child on mid-court, give them a PlayStation 5, and then take it away. I mean, it's one thing if it's a minor league baseball team or something giving away a car, or like if the Rougarou gave away a truck, like that's a big expense for the Rougarou. This is a PS5 for an NBA franchise. How about just give the kid who sat down in a meeting and goes, okay,
we can't afford it.
We're gonna have this kid show up, and then we'll give him a PlayStation so everybody thinks we're nice, and then we'll take it away and say, yeah, but here's a jersey. What? Who came up with that? And then someone in the meeting was like, "Yeah, that's good. Let's go with that."
And what are they like? What were they going to do with the PlayStation? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Bizarre. I can't even believe it's real.
Yeah. It just boggles the mind of how this continues. Things like this happen where like they've had golf courses that say that you win a car if you get a hole in one, and then they actually didn't have the car.
Didn't have the insurance.
Do they not think that people are always recording everything now?
Yeah.
Like that's just where we are at. You can't get away with something, especially in an NBA arena where there's 10,000 people there. This doesn't make any sense. Moving on here, Cody Bellinger is now a New York Yankee, as we Cubs fans know. His wife, Chase Carter, a former Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, dated Giancarlo Stanton in the past. He plays for the New York Yankees.
He does.
Trouble in the Bronx. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to take it.
I'll take it.
That's not great. I don't know. I just feel like ball players can be a little territorial in that way. Just feels a little weird. It's not like the high school team where you might have dated somebody. We're in a pretty small fishbowl here in the high school. This is the celebrity. I don't know. It just seems like that's a little bit much.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine there's not going to be any sort of. There's going to be a little bit of like just weird tension.
That's
there.
weird.
There's going to be weird tension. All right, next one. Phoenix Suns owner Matt Ishbia announced at all Suns home games for the rest of the season they will offer $2 hot dogs, water, soda, chips, and popcorn. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I mean, I want to know what the cold pops are going for.
Well,
I'm assuming they're not going to knock that down to $2.
I can't imagine.
Augusta does. Actually, Augusta's like $4.
They're like $4, but that's still compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean,
on the Superdome, you got to take out a lot.
Yeah.
But
hopefully,
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I hope this becomes a little bit of a trend.
Yes. The
Where was I
Falcons did
recently?
it first, and they literally showed that it was successful for them. And so now the Suns are, and I'm sure it'll be successful for them. So maybe this will be like the college football beer trend that started last year.
I'm so curious. Like, I got a margarita at a hotel recently, probably in the last like 3 years.
It was like $20?
Yeah, and it's like, I just started to think in my brain, like, what is a margarita going to cost my son when he's 41 at a hotel? Like, $58 for a frozen? Is that where we're going here? Like,
I don't know.
I
Maybe not.
I realize that people, in the 40s that were paying, 8 cents for whatever it was, think that we're out of control now, and that's just the way things go, and the way if you make more, you can spend more, whatever. But like, that just breaks my brain that that's where we're headed at a certain point, and I hope that concessions will be a reasonable expense again. That's nothing else is going down in price, so maybe concessions can go down in price. But money, as we know, rules everything in the entire sports world, and really everything in the world, period. So,
all right, last one real quick. Golf press were admitted to the new TGL League studio and got a glimpse of what it looked like. Billy Horschel hit a shot out of a bunker and said that the bunker contains sand that's only used at one certain other golf course in the world. Augusta sand in the TGL. Take it or leave it.
I mean, I'm going to leave that. There's no way they would do a Well, I guess there is a way, but there's no way they actually did that.
Or maybe they just had the same source. I don't know.
Augusta sand. That sounds like good sand.
It's probably pretty nice.
Everything Augusta sounds good to me.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us here on this Wednesday. Again, if you missed any of the show, catch it on demand. Matt's about to drive you home on After Further Review. We're back tomorrow. Same time, same place. Y'all have a safe and happy Wednesday evening. See you tomorrow on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Make LeBear's Baton Rouge your game day headquarters all winter long. I've told you about my evenings at LeBear's over the course of the fall and now into the winter. It's a fantastic spot there at ESPN Bet to go watch some sports. They've got huge screens. It's fantastic seating. You can individually sit in spots that are real comfortable with cup holders, and you can eat your food right there as well. They got great group seating options as well. The blackjack table is right behind you. The sportsbook window is right behind you, and the drink specials and food are great as well. It's truly an awesome spot to watch a game. So if you want to watch college football playoffs over the weekend, want to watch the NFL coming up on Sunday, if you got a fantasy playoff game and want to have your eyes on multiple games, LeBear's is a great spot to do it. Penn's online sportsbook is now live in Louisiana, so you can score big this season at LeBear's Baton Rouge. Get on by and see him at ESPN Bet inside LeBear's. However you want to play, you must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 for help.